The bottom of Miller's Cave. I arrived at the Waffle House off of I-65 northbound in the town of Greenbrier to meet up with my colleague Leonard Choate, who had kept correspondence through email up until today. We were scheduled to meet at 4 p.m. and it was getting closer and closer to 5 p.m. when this white, dented, beat-up Oldsmobile came sputtering into the parking lot of the Waffle House. Expecting a nicer car, I thought perhaps he's as local as he says. Out came a man wearing the Carhartt catalog and a bright orange hunting beanie. Yes, definitely local scholars here, I thought. My stomach was overfilled with eggs and coffee. The heat was beginning to get overbearing, rays of solar energy whispering up from the ground like ghosts. I was starting to get a tan. "I reckon you're Louis Truman from Boston." He picked me out immediately, for as obvious it was to the untrained eye that Leonard was local, it was clear that I wasn't from Tennessee, in my khaki shorts and polo shirt. This was a wardrobe that Leonard had to talk me out of, because we were about to go spelunking. "Miller's Cave goes down about 400 feet, that we can reach anyways. But with the help of some cave bots, we should find just how deep that baby goes next week." For being unmatched in clothes, Leonard and I matched an enthusiasm for cave exploration. I edited a Boston Science Journal geology and archaeology section, and over the years it had been really clear that most of the world's history could be found at the bottom of an underground cave system. For over a century, fringe scientists have dug up prehistoric animals and ancient humans out of springs and caves, but hardly anyone was checking Tennessee, who had the most caves in the 57 states. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, and the few caves I had been to were on road trips down south with my father. After talking to Dr. Choate for several months, I had made the conclusion that my hunches held a lot of truth. Cave exploration would be the key to a lot of discoveries for several college departments. Journalism wasn't paying the bills very well, but this one piece received a grant from an anonymous source. The letter simply said I should follow the instructions. They told me to reach out to a Dr. Leonard Choate, head of the geology department at Vanderbilt University. The department had just recently been formed and created solely for coal pollution mitigation. How like the corporations to hide behind the facade of academics to sweep their coal dust under the rug. I had orders to follow if I wanted to catch my final break from this stagnant old life. "Last week, my team from Vanderbilt was digging at the bottom of that 400 feet. You'll be surprised as we were. Please." He gestured towards his Oldsmobile, and I climbed in. We stopped by a Tractor Supply where Leonard helped me pick out some clothes for the trip down into the mines, as he sometimes called them. I had my voice recorder handy for some of his facts and interviews. Anything to bring back to the journal to substantiate putting in a series on cave exploration. And I got it all recorded on a tiny handheld poker chip with a button. My grandfather had shown me some antiques. They were somewhat similar but larger and used small plastic boxes filled with the flimsiest of ribbons that stored sound. Now a simple voice recorder is the size of a silver dollar and just as waterproof. We left the tractor supply store decked out in new clothes and headed west down the highway towards Penn J. Miller's farm. The farm had been handed down through the Miller family for almost 3 centuries, since the 1870s. A lot of history here on this very land. One of the relatives of the Bell family supposedly had spirits follow them here. People claim to see things out here that just can't be explained. Leonard was fumbling one hand in the center compartment for his soda, while the other hand steadfastly gripping the steering wheel. He had a look of bewilderment etched in his profile. As if confused by his own discoveries, his eyebrows hovered above his chestnut eyes. The Oldsmobile veered back into its correct lane, but my right hand kept a firm grip on the oh shit handle. Like what? I asked, gauging his skepticism towards the supernatural, or seeing if he truly meant unexplainable phenomena. I work for a science journal, after all. I have no time for futile ghost stories. Well, I'm a man of facts first, but so many times over the years have people talked of Wendigos and Slender Men, Bigfoot, aliens. Hell, I've heard it all. There was a story way back of a tree with glow-in-the-dark sap that oozed out of it. But I haven't seen any of those things myself. I've yet to see anything really remarkable up until now. The Oldsmobile scooted on down the road, kicking up dust that came in through the cracked windows. My eyelids twitched a bit. Where was he going with this? This the same man I've been emailing since Christmas? So, like, folktales? I was trying to be funny. No, maybe not magical in the X-Files sort of way, but enough to overthrow the new consensus as we know it. History redefined, my friend. And it's at the bottom of a well. He smiled a smile that solved his earlier confused grimace. It was the satisfaction of discovery he nearly forgot. Yet a foreign spark loomed in his eyes, a grand suspicion of something. He knew with conviction that he had found history like we discussed in so many emails. The bottom of Miller's cave? I asked, giving him a smoke from my jacket. Bingo! He then reached for some sunflower kernels and stuffed his mouth full of them, the cigarette tucked behind his ear. He chewed a while and said, "Try to keep an open mind on this trip. I don't need some city boy whistling out 400 feet below the Earth's surface. You gone spelunking before?" Well, I've done some in Georgia, and I just visited Dunbar Cave a few towns over. I assured him, knowing full well that the experience didn't really count towards whatever depths and crannies that Miller's Cave had to offer. My stomach gurgled with breakfast diner acid at the thought of it all. He laughed and said, "All right, I hope you're not claustrophobic. This one has a tight squeeze, but takes only 10 minutes to get across. Longest, soggiest 10 minutes you'll probably ever experience. But if you're looking for discoveries, you won't be disappointed." Of course, I'm claustrophobic as hell. But Leonard need not know. He kept driving until we arrived at a dirt road. The kind you didn't think existed anymore. A stretch of dirt and rock that you wouldn't dare drive an electric car down. We passed a sign that said Trail of Tears Historical Highway Route. I thought of the day we learned in history class about Andrew Jackson, a brutal president who drove most of the indigenous peoples west, or so we had remembered, or so we were trying to prove nowadays. The great gaslight of early new curriculum days had really done its number on Americans. The Oldsmobile hit a huge pothole, and Leonard took a sharp left by an old shack that had a baby oak tree growing out of its roof, and we parked. We must have walked 3 miles away from this point across rocky terrain, across limestone and tree roots, wild grass and blackberry bushes. We came upon a creek for half an hour and followed it when Leonard said, "Here we are." He pointed a gloved finger to a small waterfall of runoff beside the creek. The water mostly led to nowhere, it seemed. It was just a small stream that broke off and faded into the farmlands, past a small sliver of forest. He stepped under it with an umbrella, revealing a passageway of foreboding darkness. I followed him, taking photos with my eye contacts. My insurance plan finally covered my prescription contacts, and I figured I could get a major upgrade for my job. I am a journalist, after all. It wasn't too long before we were crawling, scraping our knees past the homes of many a salamander and bat colony. We reached a wall of white, yellow-stained crystals after an hour on our knees. A few tributaries of luminous moss grew up and out of the cave floor to the ceiling. We were finally able to stretch our spines when Dr. Choate said it was more commonly called Goblin's Gold, or as the old textbooks say, Schistostega pinnata. It was funny to hear in his southern accent. "Okay, Lewis, you've now seen the pretty moss. We can turn our lights back on." Leonard pulled out a rope and handed it to me while holding on to the bulk. "I want you to take one end and tie it around your waist. Trust me, the last thing you want to do is go down the wrong corridor. Thankfully, our lasers helped us map this whole thing out, and I got the damn thing memorized. You feel a tug, just slide in that direction. Understood?" "Gotcha." I pulled out some water and left the bottle behind, for our packs and gadgets could not fit with us. With my eyelids, I snapped some photos quickly of the crystal wall for the journal. I followed Leonard into the darkness. We slid sideways for what seemed like 30 minutes, but upon checking my eye contacts, it was only 9 minutes and 45 seconds. I felt something with many small legs crawl down my back, and yes, secretly I was quite claustrophobic, arachnophobic, and a bit scared of the dark too, but Leonard being down there with me kept me from wussing out, as he said. We persevered till we got to the equally dark side of the narrow cave corridor. "Now here's where it gets interesting. Full light, Lewis." I turned my headlamp to its fullest setting until it revealed a dugout hole, small in width but 300 feet deeper. "Don't want to go down there yet, Lewis," Leonard reassured me. "We cast nets instead. We'll save the leftover grunt work for the next expedition when we can employ the bots." He pointed to all the specimens they had dug up from the well of the cave spring, already lined up along the wall of the great hall. were dozens of specimens laid out and labeled neatly. There were prehistoric bones from the Ice Age, all the way back to the early Mesozoic era. The most recent discovery in this corridor found me in great shock. Fully preserved in the low oxygen, sun-deprived environment was a skeleton of an adult man wearing a blue cap and long white hair protruding from the sides of it. He had a blue shirt and blue pants with bits of steel found around his bones. Is this? I couldn't find the words to even ask the question. Yes, Leonard smiled with an open mouth as if surprised again by the find. A Yankee soldier. He handed me a name tag that read Thomas Weaver. Well, that's not all, my friend, Leonard chimed before I could say anything. Look at this. And we walked over to a small hall of what I presumed were more recent findings. They were all Homo sapien artifacts and bones. We found virtually a whole Cherokee family down here. These people are most definitely Native Americans, the fabled Native Americans. The rumors have been true, Lewis. And it's time we investigate the last 100 years of published history books because the government does not want us to know. I've said it for years, but to have proof, I said. The history of our childhood, in my mind, always confused trails with the so-called change of consensus. The great change did not come until I had started freshman year of graduate school. There was a whole 2 months delay in everyone's classes that year. Yes, Lewis, but we must be careful how we publish our findings. Lots of people work a living keeping this stuff a secret. I'd hate to one day stop getting emails from you, bud. His tone was dead serious, and I was feeling bittersweet at the sentiment. What do we do then? I was beginning to get paranoid. I shut off my eye contact's data and Wi-Fi and kept my voice recorder inactive. The change of consensus. What a load to unravel. Congress decided in 2087 to change the history, science, and English textbooks for all public schools and higher education to fit a curriculum fitting of government-based truth and research. The cronies that had been for decades accusing all journalism of being fake, now pointing their decrepit ruling fingers towards the realm of education. The same group protesting the New World Order had inadvertently created the very monster they claimed they were up against. Becoming Big Brother in the process, they wiped out all things negative about our country and the world of facts. Start with the information, of course. But for those of us who had gone to school before that bill was passed, we knew a different side of literature and poetry, American and world history, science and evolution. Now we can gather from their artifacts that these are definitely indigenous folk, but we're gonna need some more of those so-called fringe experts, those who aren't on the change of consensus curriculum, or even politically swayed in any way. We need more academic folk down here, but it has to stay hush-hush till we reconcile the politics. Gotcha. I was amazed at what we were looking at. Proof. Real proof that most of our country was being lied to for the past 40 years. Justify it with a third world war, a plague, a famine, and all of our natural disasters. They'll turn poetry into mere rubbish. They'll turn archaeology findings into IKEA instructions, just bastardizing every beautiful and ugly thing they can get their hands on. It was a shame that the anonymous grant money did come from a consensus-related source. I have to be very subtle about how I write my paper, and I had to be careful about how we handled Dr. Leonard's choke. This one I know is Overhill Cherokee by its headdress, but some of these have been separated by the others in subtle degrees. How so? Well, for one, the carbon dating on this fellow reads 2 years from this fellow, pointing to another set of bones and artifacts. We leave them down here for secrecy, and, well, where else are they going to stay so well preserved? Anywho, we need a historian or anthropologist to identify these tribes. My theory is, a long time ago, during the Trail of Tears, different members of different tribes found themselves falling into the same sinkhole. One of these is an Iroquois that predates American colonization. Always separated from the tribe, we only find one from each. Maybe 2 Cherokees, 4 Blackfoot, and the rest I'm not qualified to say. Leonard and I watched our lamps dance their light on the findings. Centipedes trailed the walls behind them. A slow drip of water dripped from the ceiling. Leonard reached down to grab something from the ground when he thought I wasn't looking. Let's get heading back before it gets too dark outside, he sighed. Fun time was over. Leonard and I trudged through the room, down the 10-minute corridors, past the crystal wall, and up through the tunnel that led out to the waterfall opening. We got out, turned off our headlamps, and to say the least, I remained speechless. However, things were too quiet when we reached the peaceful solitude of the waterfall. No birds, no bugs, no frogs, as usual. Leonard choked. We know you're there. Now put your hands up where I can see them. A strong voice had called out. Fuck! Leonard gestured to me with his eyes towards the waterfall, where I hadn't quite completely revealed myself yet, as per instructions. But against protocol, I turned on my eye contacts and hit record on the voice recorder. The whole thing unfolded in such a short amount of time. Handcuffs by one officer, the shotgun held by another officer. They led Leonard away through the woods. Leonard, who had just proven a major conspiracy to be true, and who refused to look my direction as they led him off of Miller's farm. I finally found the courage to take deep breaths again as I heard the cop shuttles zoom away. I got back to Leonard's Oldsmobile, thinking it too risky to jumpstart. I'd be a dead giveaway. So I headed down the Trail of Tears historical highway towards the town of Greenbrier, thinking that life is stranger than fiction. envisioning our own quicksand that history keeps finding itself in, only to bubble up to the surface later, refined and ready to burn again. I kept wondering if Base was going to compensate me handsomely for torching the cave and leading the authorities to him. In the back of my mind, though, I saw what I saw. Down in those mines. I turned in my resignation 6 months afterwards to the Boston Science Journal. But if they used me once for their dirty work, they'll find me again. I now had to decide to hide the truth or blow a whistle. For the longest time, I kept regrettably silent. I wish I had spoken up sooner. I wish my family didn't rely on me to lie to our country for as long as I did. Months since that day, I traveled the highway as a shuttle salesman, walking up to doors with empty driveways, selling Teslas. Oh, how I hated the damn things. I thought about the destroyed evidence. How destroyed it was, I didn't know. I had a family to think about. But on the other hand, I didn't want them to be dishonored. For now, I'm playing it safe. Town to town I run, hoping never to be re-enlisted for any great change, new consensus services. There was no new deal to be made. I had done enough.